Washington County computer tells me it's 7:30 a.m. So we will call this meeting to order. The clerk has posted the notification of this meeting in accordance with the appropriate protocols. With us today, we have Supervisors Galax, McCulick, Bisfalik, and Berg. And Mr. Schleif has joined us as well. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Just a protocol item this morning. We have audio, but we do not have video. So for sure, anybody who stands or comes to the podium, please identify yourselves because people on the audio will not have notification as to who's speaking. We've asked the same of the committee here to ask to be recognized, and so we'll recognize those individuals asking questions or making comments, such those listening on the audio will know who is speaking. So since we have a public hearing this morning, we're going to move that item to the top of the agenda. We'll return to the other items shortly. Ms. Duck will read the information regarding the public hearing.
Notice is hereby given that a public hearing will be held at a meeting of the Washington County Land Use and Planning Committee in room 1019 of the Washington County Government Center, 432 East Washington Street, West Bend, Wisconsin, on Thursday, November 17, 2022 at 7:30 a.m. There will be heard and considered the petition of KF Liebert Revolt Trust, tax parcel ID T13 1560320 5005 Birchwood Road, West Bend, Wisconsin 53095. Rezone a portion of the shoreline wetland zone of Washington County as follows: to rezone a portion of the county's shoreline wetland zoning district for placement of fill for the use and purpose of a private driveway. The property is located in the town of West Bend. The shoreline wetlands floodplain zoning maps of Washington County are established and maintained pursuant to sections 275.03B and 275.12 of the Washington County Code, dated this 31st day of October 2022.
Thank you. I declare this public hearing open. We'll take comments from the public. Anyone addressing this group should state their name and address. Please confine your comments to no more than 3 minutes. Is there anyone from the gallery who would like to address the committee? Let's have the gentleman speak. Sir, please come to the podium.
Morning.
Good morning.
Herbert Wolf. Representing the applicants for their record, and they have submitted. I'm working actually for the gentleman who's going to be purchasing the property from them, but the attorney representing the applicant says you have to re-request sent the letter for the file indicating I could represent their interests this morning if you had questions or items that need to be addressed, because I'm the one that actually prepared all the applications at the local level, always with the federal government. So I'm very familiar with the entire project. So I'm essentially here to respond to questions if there are any, because I believe you have all the information that I submitted to the various levels of government, and they all signed off on it.
All right. Thank you, sir. Are there any comments or questions from those visitors in the gallery this morning? If not, then we'll close the public hearing. And is there a motion and second from the committee to continue and proceed with this discussion? Mr. Gallo. Mr. McCulick. All right, thank you. Mr. Sebo, you address the subject, please.
Yes, we don't get rezones for wetlands that often. I think the last one was in 2019. But just for everybody's information, I mean, hopefully you read all this stuff and you understand what was being asked of. But in the county shoreline code, the rezone is for use, and that's really what the county's wetland zoning is for use. It's not for the bill. It's actually changing the use of that wetland for a driveway. Wetland fill and everything else, the discharge and all that's what DNR and Army Corps And obviously they permitted it, so, yeah, I just wanted, yes, do that little bit of education of why we have the zoning, the wetland zoning, and like I said, it's kind of a use change, so. If there's any other questions, I'll take those as well.
Any questions from the committee members? Mr. Vespalic.
Just on, and it pertains to the wetland area there, when I'm looking at the map, is it just, there was a yellow highlighted box? I mean, I don't know if that's the right way to put that. As far as how much wetland is affected by this driveway.
So it was in the report, there's 14% of the wetland, they're gonna fill about 1,500 square feet. So I don't know if I had, but yeah, the wetland is approximately a quarter acre size. It's a quarter acre, you're looking at 10,000
Right by the
square
road.
feet.
I think that was right by the road.
Yep.
Okay, just so I understand how much and where it is and.
Right. I mean, there's definitely criteria we look at in order to even take these to rezone and for consideration. And those are listed in the report, has to do with flooding and stormwater and shoreline protection. And because this is my isolated wetland, it's 800 feet away from Big Cedar Lake. Yeah, it seems like a viable option to get to the property. They do have an easement to the property north for a driveway, but everybody wants their driveway and be able to fill that wetland. There was an old recorded document when this parcel was given to the Weebricks. And it basically laid out exactly where a future driveway could go. And they matched that and been in contact with the Cedar Lake Conservation Foundation to make sure that their records and what was recorded many years ago with the driveway location is exactly where it was all said. So they are satisfied and they're not here today. So.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you, Mr. Sebo. Hearing none, no other questions or comments. We'll vote on the request, which is to accept the request to revise the wetland district boundary of the K. Weebrick Revocable Trust and Map Amendment. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The request is granted. We'll now return to the prepared agenda and move to the items in the consent agenda, which is the minutes from our October 20 meeting. Are there any discussion points or is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented? Mr. Vespalic, Mr. Berg. Any questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We'll now move to the discussion items, the first of which will be a presentation by our friends at UW-Madison Extension. Ms. Coleman and Mr. Ballwig are going to make a presentation, but we're going to have an introduction first by Cindy.
I'm Cindy Sarkady. I don't know if I've met all of you, but I'm the Area Extension Director for UW Extension, and that our area is Washington, Fond du Lac, Sheboygan, and Ozaukee County. And thank you for having this time. Tina Coleman is going to come up and share a little bit. She's our dairy educator, agent, and then Mike Ballwig will be up and he's our crops and soils. And they work in the area.
Good morning. I'm Tina Coleman, the Extension Regional Dairy Educator, and I've met some of you this previous spring during the Washington County's annual report. And just a little bit of highlight of our programming, we're part of the Ag Institute at UW Extension during the restructuring, and part of that mission is to help farms be viable, environmentally sustainable, as well as protect our food safety. So through the dairy program area, we try to achieve those three goals. This past year, working with the 4-county area, we have done what's the copper sulfate project, where copper sulfate is used at a high amount on farms for treating hoof health. And we have to dispose of it. Much of it is disposed in the lagoons or manure systems and then applied on land, which could be, we don't know yet, whether there's an impact environmentally, as well as an impact to the nutrition and feed from the forage uptake. So we're currently working on farms in all 4 counties as part of that project to get a baseline of the impact of copper sulfate and the application long-term on the lands for farm productivity and as well as environmental stewardship. We also work a lot through my programming, specifically more on animal welfare, animal husbandry, dairy calves and heifers, and dairy production management are the 3 main areas. And as we think about dairy production management, much of that is really on animal husbandry and animal welfare. So this past spring, we did an animal welfare conference to support our dairy farmers in very scientific research-based information to apply onto the farms to increase productivities on the cows, but as well as maintain good animal husbandry and stewardship. Because as we know, cows aren't taken care of, they don't take care of their farms. Calves and heifers are an important part of our dairy production farm, even though they're sometimes considered second-class citizens on the farm because they don't bring in monetary funds until they are milking during lactation. But those animals do cost quite a huge expense on the farm. So much of the programming I do is helping dairy producers think about not only from an animal welfare perspective of managing those animals, but how can we do it in a cost-efficient way, so that we can make sure that she's paying for herself when she comes back into the milking line. And finally, we're talking about environmental stewardship. Manure is a huge aspect of a dairy operation, and we want to protect water quality, keep odor nuisance down, and obviously be good environmental stewards of that organic fertilizer we're utilizing. One of the programs we're doing coming up this February, I do encourage if you'd like to join us, is the Midwest Manure Summit held at Monbell Field. And this brings the latest technologies in manure handling. So from the aspect of the cow to storage, what can we do to minimize the nutrients in that so that we're protecting our water quality and efficiently using them on the land, as well as reducing odors and volume, because we do know that quite a bit of manure being hauled on a field, a lot of that cost is just volume of water. And so we do have a lot of technologies and experts across the country. Hope you can join us. But again, just want to reiterate that much of the programming we're doing here in the Fort County area really tries to achieve the goal of farm sustainability, or viability, environmental sustainability, and while it's protecting our food safety.
Any questions? Mr. Gallantz?
Thank you, Chair. Cindy, so you had mentioned the manure. I know earlier the county was exploring kind of a private partnership with, I don't know, maybe some of the high density farm areas and some form of either digester or something else like that. Is that something that you guys are involved with? Do you provide any counsel to the county on that?
Yes, so Paul Sable invited me to be part of that review committee for the request for proposals. So I was able to listen to that information, and also I was able to connect in the department with our manure handling expert, Beth Larson out of UW-Madison, to give us some insight of companies to reach out as they were looking for requests for proposals for their project. So we were able to connect with some resources, and then obviously our land and water conservation departments throughout the state also participate in the Midwest Manure Summit, learn some of the newest technologies that they can help support their farming community as well.
Help each other. One other question. I just saw this on some episode this past week. Bioloam, whatever. It's helping farms, fields to retain more of their nutrients. And I don't know much about it. I just heard a little bit. I was curious. Is that something that's gaining traction in Wisconsin?
Not for sure. Manure handling is probably one of my minor things that I do, even though it's environmentally sustainable to environmental stewardship. But there are a lot of technologies that our farmers are looking at to help retain that moisture, soil quality. I know my colleague Mike Molly does a lot, which he'll speak next, with looking at preserving soil health and water quality as well. But our producers are very progressive here in the Fort County area, very eagerly and willing to adapt to technologies and practices to help maintain our environmental stewardship, as well as increase animal welfare and husbandry while being efficient on the farms.
Any other questions? Mr. Schleif?
Mentioned copper sulfate. How does that fit in? Briefly explain.
So copper sulfate is a product that farmers use, mix it with water to manage what we call hairy heelworts on the farm. Hairy heelworts is a contagious pathogen with no cure. And so farmers will produce a foot bath copper sulfate water mixture
for cattle to walk through at least 3 to 4 times a week. So when we have large operations, 500, 600, 1,000 plus animals, and mixing this 3 to 4 times a week and disposing of it,
The question we're looking at is what impact does it have environmentally as well as nutritionally? Because that is being applied to the land with the manure, if it's a manure storage. And then when it's applied on the land, what kind of accumulation do we have in the soil, but what kind of uptake in the forage do we have, which then lends to entering into the cow biologically. So phase one that we're doing right now was looking at soil samples and looking at the forage samples just to see what the uptake of the cotton was in those products compared to book values. And right now, preliminary data shows that they are higher than they are in book values. And then another phase of the project is actually taking liver biopsies. Does the copper will accumulate in the liver of the animal? And are we seeing higher rates? Which then gives us more research to do of what's the impact on that animal productivity, as well as their health. So there was a lot of great questions looking at some of our management practices, again, trying to be more efficient, more productive in the long run for our farms.
Other questions or comments? If none, thank you.
Great, thank you.
Good morning, everybody. It's nice to be here and have this opportunity to talk a little bit about what I've been doing for actually several decades now. But my name is Mike Albrecht. I'm the Regional Crops and Soils Agent Educator, stationed office in Sheboygan County. And I've actually had the opportunity for quite a long time. We had an informal, before this regional arrangement now, an informal relationship with Ozaukee and Washington County to share expertise, across the counties. And I see a couple of people nodding that may have remembered that discussion going back. So while Tina talked about the animal side, I'm talking about the crops and soils, the land use, the topography of our land. And there's a couple of handouts there. And I just say before I go there and start pointing out a few things, I just want to sort of present the 30,000 foot view in terms of my program. And it's, we say crops and soils. What drives crops and soils educational programming is water quality. And this has been a shift from 20, 30 years ago, where now water quality is right at the surface when we're talking about a new agricultural practice, the type of tillage, cover crops. And then we work the agronomics in there to make both systems, to make sure that the cropping system is profitable for the farm. So, so I work with farmers, and this is true of all educators, but also with industry agronomists, implement dealers. And our objectives have been to reduce nutrient losses from the field, whether that's fertilizer or manure, because if it goes off the field, where does it go? It goes into the streams and lakes, or in some cases, the groundwater. So we want to improve soil health, which does a lot of things in terms of helping infiltration, water infiltration. To do that, we've been utilizing more cover crops, and I know your land conservation department, maybe that's not quite the right term, but has been very involved in working with those kinds of projects, as well as the tillage component. So that's the sort of 30,000 foot view that drives what I do, with that sort of underlying priority. Then I'm not going to read this, but I just wanted to highlight, and you can read this when you have time if you wish. But I divided what I've done, and this is sort of my report to you for what I've done the last year. And I divided this in several different categories because we do a lot of different kinds of education, I'll say. So in the first category is what I call in-person educational programs, where we have put together an agenda, bring in some of our university specialists, put together, have a program, talk, questions, and those kinds of things. And on this handout, the first one I highlight there is this program called the Agronomy Day. It's been held for many years, actually held in Random Lake, in Ozaki County, just over the line. This past year, we had about 140 people attend from 7 counties, but most of those people were from Sheboygan, Ozaki, Washington, and Fond du Lac. So good representation from other counties in the region participating. And so that was good to see. Real brief. Somebody tell me when I'm running out of time, but I surveyed, 99% of those people said the Agronomy Day was either excellent or good, and people said they wanted to get it in future years. So the next one, I'm going to move through these pretty quick because there's a lot of stuff here. Exploring high quality grasses in dairy forage systems. So forage is what dairy cattle eat. So forage is I do a lot of work in forages as a crop, and so there's things that we can do in our forage system that can improve our water quality, animal health. And one of those sort of new innovative things is in utilizing more perennial grass food in our mix as a way to protect, again, reduce the amount of runoff of nutrients. And then another program, and that was actually held in Waldo. Finalizing their economic inputs was held in Waupun. So if I wanted to reach that part of the region, a couple of highlights there was minimizing phosphorus runoff from the from farm fields, along with using your fertilizer dollar wisely. So those are the in-person things. And just to keep moving along here quickly, COVID really pushed us into the virtual world, and as a result of that, in the last 3 years or so, we've developed in the crops and soils area a couple of webinar series that are delivered across the state and also to farmers in the 4-county area. We combined our email list when we started to formally work together, and we've got over 1,000 people in the 4-county area in our email list, so we can reach a lot of people pretty quickly with links, webinars, and those kinds of things. So 2 of those, Badger Crop Connect, held from March through October, twice a month. Timely crop updates is the intent, utilizing a lot of our state specialists. And this other one is focused on forage, again, for targeting on dairy farms. So those are the webinars. So we've got in-person webinars. And now we can talk about the on-farm sort of applied research. And a couple of those projects, the alfalfa quality monitoring project, and I was able to sample a couple of fields here in the town of Addison, and that along with Sheboygan, Ozaki, and I know that Tina did some in Fond du Lac. But then that information is used for dairy farmers to help target harvest for optimal, for optimal production and those kinds of things. We've been doing that a long time. It's been a successful program, and somewhat similar to that is these corn silage dry down days. Again, it's about monitoring the crop. We've got great industry support. I've always tried to work closely with industry, the farm supply businesses, co-ops, to help deliver these programs. And that I think is a key to any successful extension program. And last is a Metapher at Root Rock survey that I helped conduct with one of our specialists. Again, a number of samples were collected from farms here in Washington County. So I provided some support, and Washington County has a wonderful DATCP farmer-led group, and the conservation department here, Paul and his staff do a great job of supporting the Cedar Creek farmers. There are also those group, we've got farmer-led groups in Washington and in Sheboygan. We have the Sheboygan River Progressive Farmers. We've also got two USDA demo farms in the Fort County area. My role as an extension person is to help bring university resources to those discussions when that's appropriate. If there's a gap to fill in terms of the information and need, and hopefully that's been helpful, and also with the publicity and those kind of things. Timely crop advice, and I don't know, probably none of you are on our email list, but over the summer months, especially share timely crop issues. So, whether there's a pest infestation or quality information, those kinds of things. With this rather large email list, we can get a lot of information out pretty quick. So, and that I hope has been helpful, and based on the feedback that I get, people find those useful. And if you want to be a part of the list, I'm always looking for people to volunteer sign up. So, and lastly, on this postcard, so pesticide applicator training real quickly. This I think is a good example of how the new regional model is working right now. Farmers who use restricted use pesticides need to go through a certification process in order to purchase those. When they go to the co-op, when they go to the farm supply business, they got to be able to provide this number, provided the data, to be able to purchase restricted use pesticide. Now, the extension has the responsibility for providing the training for that program. And on this postcard, you can see a little bit of a different model. This year, we used to do educators used to do the training. COVID pushed us forward. A lot of that training is virtual now, but it is testing. So in-person testing, it's a proctor test. People need to come in and take this test and pass it. But as you can see, all of the counties have testing dates, and then there are a couple of in-person dates that are being delivered by the Madison PAT people. One in Fond du Lac, the other one in Dodge, and especially the western part of Washington County connects with Dodge County pretty closely. So, but that's sort of what I got. So hopefully that makes sense. And any comments or questions?
Are there any questions for the speaker? Mr. Gallins?
Thank you, Chair. So Mike, I should have referred my question to you. My apologies about bioloaming, but no tilling. Is that picking up in Wisconsin, and do you help advise farmers on the benefits of that?
Yeah, absolutely. That's what we do. That's again.
Is it widespreadly accepted by farmers, or?
Well, it's picking up, and we've made really good progress. And I think in the last probably 5 to 8 years, we've made really good progress. Things that we've learned as we've incorporated cover crops into the system. No-till systems are becoming much more successful, and people are doing that. And in fact, one of your Washington County farmers, I had a call from Spectrum News, and they wanted to interview a farmer who was using a lot of good conservation practices. And I don't think Ross will mind me saying this, but so I suggested that the news forum on Spectrum. You guys get Spectrum over here? Okay, so I get this one thing, but did a visit with Ross Bishop on his conservation practices there down near Jackson. Ross does a great job, and so he'll be able to tell that story really well. And I know he loves to tell the story, but yeah, no-till, cover crops, less tillage. That's the drum we're beating now. I mean, and it's good for the environment, and when it's done correctly, it's good for the farmers' bottom line.
Yes, sir. Mr. McCooley.
Thank you, Chairman. So Mike, the pesticide application is very interesting to me. Where I live in the southwest corner of the city of Hartford, immediately to my west, abuts a 98-acre farm, and they that's corn and it's soybeans. I know a lot of folks in that area seem concerned when they're applying pesticides. And it's interesting to know that there's a pretty comprehensive training that the person that's applying that goes through. I wonder if you could just speak a little bit to that so that people understand that this isn't just someone sort of willy-nilly applying. I'm sure they take in a lot of factors, wind direction, all that kind of stuff.
So farmers, there's a particular class of pesticides called restricted use pesticides. So if they're using those, they need to be certified, and they need to have that certification number to even be able to buy them, kind of thing. Now, on the commercial side, and, I don't know, if this particular field, that's whether there's an individual farmer that's applying that or a commercial entity like a farm supply co-op. And a lot of our acres of corn and soybeans are sprayed and managed commercially, from the farm supply business. They've got the sprayer, they've got the spreader, and those kinds of things. So they're doing it. Anybody that's running one of those rigs or a co-op or farm supply business needs to go through another level of training, and it's a level higher than this for farmers, more rigorous. It's more detailed. You need to get a higher score to pass the exam to be certified and those kinds of things. So they are trained, and I know the Department of Ag takes pesticide application very serious. And if there are, if the drifts, if something leaves the site, if the herbicide is drifting off the site, that's a violation of the label. Sometimes we get calls from people that, especially homeowners on the edge like that, their garden got drifted, kind of thing. The Department of Ag takes that really seriously. And what any citizen, homeowner, can do is to contact the Wisconsin Department of Ag, and they'll inspect it. They'll call and they'll figure out what's going on and see if in fact it was a violation. But they put a lot of energy in trying to make sure that that's all right.
Thank you.
Just to qualify, one of the terms you've used regarding the pesticides, you were saying that they need to do this, they need to do that. It's not just a need, they're required to do this. Is that correct?
Well, yeah, required. If they're going, again, it depends on the class of pesticides that they're actually applying. But if they're using one of these restricted use pesticides, they're required to do this training, to get the certification number, to give to the retail office, the retail store, before they can actually purchase it. And that's that's how the system is guaranteed to work. You can't buy this from the retailer until the retailer has a certification number from them. And then the Department of Ag comes back, when they're doing their spot checks, they make sure that they look at the retailers list of, who's bought restricted use pesticides. And, they check it that way as to, who's covered in this kind of thing. So,
Any other questions or comments?
I do, Mr. Chairman.
What's that?
Just a brief comment. You mentioned Ross Bishop.
Yeah.
And he will be addressing the full county board, I believe, in February.
Okay.
On some of the practices that he uses.
Yeah. Ross has been a leader here in the county for many years. He's done a great job. He loves to reach out, and he's had the school kid, school age kids visit, learn about agriculture and those kinds of things. So he does a really nice job.
And his wife Marcy is a past supervisor.
Oh, okay. There you go.
She's, the bishops are not at all strangers to this group, sir.
Yeah, good.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our last discussion item has to do with the Farmland Preservation Planning Grant. There's someone making a presentation on that? Good morning.
Morning.
I'm Deb Stolsky, Community Development Director. I just provided a brief report on the DACNET grant that we'll be applying for. It's for $30,000 to assist us in updating the farmland preservation plan. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
The information was in the packet. Are there any questions on the materials that were provided?
Thank you.
Thank you, Deb. Moving on to the action items, our first item is B, a resolution authorizing the county to accept a donation of a permanent storage shed for Ackerman Grove Park.
Can you hear me? Good morning.
Good morning. Ms.
Morning, Jamie.
Ludovic.
Jada Ryan. This is Jamie Ludovic, Chief Community Development Officer speaking. I just wanted to, this information is very straightforward. Eric Lampard from the SC Way of Soccer Club organization is here on behalf of their board. If you have any questions, the committee and county board do have authority over permanent structures donated to the county.
We need a motion to accept this for discussion.
I'll motion.
Mr. McCulloch, Mr. Vespalic. Any questions or comments on the report? Supervisor Vespalic.
In there, it stated that, exhibit C, that the construction company is not responsible for replanting, reseeding. Is that been discussed, or who's responsible for that?
So our agreement globally with this organization is they pay us for all of our labor hours on those fields. So I don't know if it's likely to be if there's earthwork that needs to be fixed. I don't know if we've determined if they'll pay a contractor directly for that, or if they'll do it and they'll pay us directly for that, which will be at their cost. Does that continue to make sense?
Yeah, no, the cost part of it is what I was, because this is donated and they're gonna build this, but there's gonna be cement trucks and things going in there, and there's gonna be considerable, repairs that have to be done, and who's responsible for that, and how does that work, so.
And that's the case that we find ourselves in whenever we have long-term agreements with people where we've essentially inherited a structure for maintenance purposes, and we look at whether or not that we will be now looking at whether or not that needs to be added to our 2050 maintenance plan. We felt like there was low risk there because at the end of this maintenance shed's life, either we are saying, take this down, pay for it again, or we just take it down and it's a low, it's not a huge disruption to the area.
Any other questions or comments? Mr. Gallitz?
Yeah, so I see there's an existing shed. Is that being taken down, or is that going to continue to be there?
I'm going to ask Logan, who is our works and trails manager, if he knows the answer to that.
Okay, to your point about
Yeah.
ongoing maintenance.
Yeah,
right?
he's
So-
been working directly with the soccer club on the plan. Do you know the answer to that yet?
Logan West, Parks and Trails Manager. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that existing shed is pretty much not functioning anymore. It's in really poor condition, and the plan is that it will take it down and removed.
And one other question I had, I know this is donated and it says it's a property of the county. So what if the county decides to use it for some other purposes than the intended purpose of the soccer club and the donation?
I suppose we have that ability, but we won't, at least not in the short term.
And then this is probably outside of this, but I'm assuming from a legal standpoint, all the indemnity and the use of that's all under a normal policy and processes.
Yes, in our agreement with them, they hold insurance as well. So this is fairly standard.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments? If not, then we'll have a vote on this resolution. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Resolution is approved and passed. Now, since the next three topics are all interrelated, we're gonna ask Ms. Yes.
There was a discussion item.
Are there any questions on that report?
Land resource quarterly report?
Well, the Land Resources Quarterly
Oh,
Report.
yes,
I'm
that we did
sorry.
not.
We skipped, I apologize. We skipped right over that. Mr. Sebo, please.
I have nothing really to add onto the quarterly report, what's written in there. Unless there's questions. The one that is red is because we had a staff vacancy. We're working through the process to replace that, so that just kind of delays the implementation of being able to utilize survey equipment and actually survey in on the sanitary systems as they're being installed. But the guy that left was the big technology guru in the office and was really pushing that and training other staff.
Any questions or comments? My apologies,
No,
sir, for skipping over that. Yes,
Maybe
Mr.
only
Gallus.
a comment about that. It's, so it's bringing about efficiencies for both sides, right? For the applicants as well as you and your office reviewing.
Absolutely. And even long term, because then we have GIS maps, which the systems be GIS maps. So when somebody else comes in for another permit, says, hey, I want to put a shed up in my backyard. Where is that septic system? You bring out scan images and now here it's actually going to be on their photo. They'll actually show the outline of that.
So you're saying the installers or the inspector will come out and take those points?
The inspector can go and fix those points.
Okay.
Yep.
Mr. Bispalik.
Just, you had mentioned that in this, in that app, you're waiting for something? Should.
We had a staff turnover and the guy that left was really the big technology guru of this and teaching and training other staff. So because of short staff and still trying to get work done, it just takes a little longer at times to be out in the field doing this. We have one inspector that doesn't have the equipment and has not been trained on that. So that's going to be something that we'll work on over winter and get something refilled in that position, hopefully, and they'll have the technology and be able to move this forward and be back on track.
So a new timeline, I mean, it says May 1st, we're not on, like a timeline, no timeline really specific.
I think May 1st is still kind of the goal, and actually would be May 1st is when all the inspectors would be utilizing the equipment, surveying things, and we would actually have that out on the online GIS later that people could view and see. So,
And just to clarify, these customer service improvement initiatives are one of the lowest priorities of the work that's being done. So as we have that vacancy and until, and if, depending on what happens with that position, it's hard to really set those timelines.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you, sir. Now we'll move on to side items C, D, and E. As I was stating, since these are all interrelated, we're going to have Ms. Ludovic address all the items at the same time, and then we'll vote on them individually. So I'll entertain a motion and a second for each of these items individually. Then we'll have the discussion and then we'll come back. So we need a motion concerning item C, the fee schedule. Is there a motion and second? Mr. Berg, Mr. Gallons. Item D, the policy statement. Is there a motion and a second? Mr. Berg, Mr. Vispalik. Concerning item E, the 2023 budget amendment, is there a motion and second? Mr. Vispalik, Mr. McCooley. All right.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so just really quick point of procedure. The Land Use and Planning Committee has governance of the fee schedule as well as any policies. Okay, so when we start talking about the fee amounts and the analysis and the rate setting, you recall the increased rates at a prior meeting that never went to the county board, right? So the county board does not necessarily set rates. The county board does, however, authorize expenses and revenues via the budget. So the last item, the reason we're talking about adding a fee and setting a new fees is so that later in 2023, so next year, we're talking about come January 1st, we're asking for additional authorization to spend more money out of our maintenance line item in accordance with our 2050 plan. So we're also planning to collect more money, and we can talk about that analysis. It's not one for one. We're planning to actually collect more than that expense increase in the budget to follow kind of our balance we're hoping to secure for the 2050 plan. So that's why from you, we need 3 votes, and then at the end, budget amendment will go to the county board with this stuff as backup. The county board won't or shouldn't really go into the fee policy and say, change line 21 from, we don't think that you said that the chief community development officer was going to have authority, change that to the county executive, or change that to the county committee, right? That's a discussion with this group, and at the county board level, you would say the committee already approved the policy. That's not before you. Right, it's there so you can see what's happening with the fees and the revenues and the expenses, but the detail of it is really this committee's prerogative. So if if there is a desire to have that amendment go first and then come back and take the policy again, we can always do something like that for this committee. So first on the fee schedule, just a couple of points I want to make. So we don't usually do a 2023/2024 fee schedule. It almost always follows the biennium. So you will see this fee schedule completely again that says 2024/2025. However, we have so far made those changes in red for 2024 that you see under, it's like column 4 fees under the shelters. We just did that at a prior meeting, and so we wanted to make sure we showed kind of the accurate fees we have on the books. What this is doing today for this year and next year is adding and if you see, if you're on the fee schedule, you see how the top box says reservation fee, and then it's kind of broken down into cleaning fee and maintenance fee. So it's our intent for our customer to see, okay, so let's say they reserve a small open air shelter and that is $75. They will see $75 and a $50 reservation fee. But for our knowledge, we have that reservation fee broken down into what's going towards cleaning and what's going towards our 2050 needs. I will also tell you that in the case of those shelter rates, we are adding these fees, or we're proposing to add these fees today. And we have already talked internally that we will be in 2024 and 2025, based on kind of our analysis, we won't be raising rates because this fee add of $50 to these rates is essentially what we believe we can sustain in terms of the total cost of this into the future. So this is essentially the rates and the fees do need to be looked at together in terms of what the overall cost to the customer is. I don't know. I'm just going to stop right there. Did everybody follow that?
Yeah.
So,
Yes, Mr. Gallett.
Just for clarification, so the maintenance fee, as we talked about earlier, is new. Cleaning is not new. It's been built into the reservation fee, but we're now pulling this out and identifying it individually.
Yes, Logan, do you want to add to what we had been doing practically and procedurally versus how we're talking about it now? We just started talking about it and it was confusing in terms of kind of what we were doing, and also we didn't feel it was properly translated for all of you to see, like, this is actually okay.
Yeah, so I feel like previously we had cleaning fees on certain items. I think for the houses, we actually administered that one, but it was very low. The to clean one of our houses is anywhere from a 2.5 to 4 hour process, and I think we were charging $25, which isn't, you know, it doesn't cover that expense.
Right.
So what we did is we looked at, or I looked at, kind of a average, how many hours or how much time it takes our staff to take care of these venues after, per reservation. And applied that, kind of in a logical sense of how much we could actually charge, to recoup some of that. The original, when you look at the reservation fee itself, somebody's gonna pay $75 for a shelter. There's a lot of things that are taken out there, right?
The rate.
Yeah, the rate itself, that, some of that money will pay for, some of the salaries in our office, or to keep the electrical on in the park. And we really felt like the amount of time we spent to clean these facilities, that was not really covered by those rates. And so we wanted to separate that out for the customers to see that there is going to be a clean fee applied for that. And internally, it just makes sense to identify that to make sure we're recouping enough of those expenses to pay for some of our labor that it takes to maintain these facilities.
And building on that, we had the conversation about, I'm gonna pick on the human services staff retreat, where they use glacier no alcohol. Or where there's an exception where we're looking at using the facilities. A lot of times, and this is in the policy around the discounted rate section, we're having a conversation about that, but then the enterprise doesn't cover our costs to clean, or, the expense on kind of that maintenance side. And so you see that in the policy, which we talked about, and that's a slight transition with instituting the maintenance fee, that if we discount the rates, okay, but everybody's gonna pay $150 for cleaning and maintenance, right? That's gonna be put towards the capital and the cleaning, the hard costs that we have, no matter who you are. And there might be a rare exception to that, but that's kind of the thought process around making sure we designate what the money's for.
The figures we're seeing here, the way they're broken out is broken out for internal purposes. Is that correct? The public doesn't see it this way.
Well, they will on the reservations.
They will see our software will show just a reservation fee, one fee.
Right.
They're not, the brides for major rentals get contracts, and they will actually see the reservation fee and then kind of get broken into cleaning, maintenance, and credit card processing. And part of that is because if they pay cash for both of their payment transactions, then in theory they would get that credit card discount, which is something we're not doing now. We have an administrative fee that they pay regardless. So that should be seen, that should be seen as a benefit to our user that we're offering that service.
But we are gonna begin offering this $3 or the 3% fee for credit card processing for those people who pay cash and write a check.
Right, so if you reserve the call and it's $5,000 and you pay cash, you essentially will not pay an additional 3%. But if you bring us a credit card, you're going to see an administrative fee on there for 30 times 5, $150.
Right. Now, question, are these expenses or these charges in line with what a competitive commercial situation would also be charging?
I would say our research in this, yes, they are. We had to keep it within reason. You look at our cabins, for example, we didn't want to have a scenario where people were paying more in their fees than the actual reservation itself. But it is industry standard across the board. I mean, you see it, you go rent the whole house on Airbnb, VRBO, that rate that's broken out in every reservation. Personally, you'll see cleaning fees and, they'll call them facility fees or whatever. So that is industry standard.
If they don't have a pet, they don't pay a pet fee, obviously.
Right.
Mr. Gallantz.
What would just your comment, the interchange fee, basically it's set by, processors.
Right.
So these are MasterCard, depending upon your volume, you'll get a higher or lower rate. So.
Correct.
That's how that is set. But back to the scheduling, to your comment about it's more costly to clean a large open shelter or whatever. So why are the fixed fees? Shouldn't they be a percentage of that size? So if I'm getting a small shelter at $75, I get paid 25. And if I have a cabin, or if I have a large enclosed shelter, 25, more people, more mess, more cleaning, shouldn't that be?
That varies.
sealed?
I use the averages of our labor hours to figure those out because it's not necessarily the amount of people that are there, it's how well that group takes care of it. There are times where we'll show up after a wedding, and even though in our contract it says, you must leave this space relatively clean, pick up after yourselves, it's not always the case. And we do hit their damage deposit for that sometimes if it's egregious enough, but some groups do a really good job. So sometimes you'll come in to clean a barn and it'll take you an hour and a half because they did a really good job. Sometimes you come in there and it'll take 4 hours. And I've tracked that historically over the last year and really just used an average for, our labor rates for that number and broke it down by thing.
Sorry, I'm looking at it from a analytical side, and it ranges from 10 to 33% of the daily shelter rental fee. So if I'm looking at that going, So again, I don't know, but from a policy standpoint, to me, it would make more sense to charge more for a facility that's going to require more cleaning. Or to your point, if people abuse it or misuse it, you go into their deposit. So I don't know what the appropriate amount is, but if you go in and it takes half hour to sweep and mop, and that's a normal process, and you got 500 square feet versus 5,000 square feet, shouldn't you pay more for 5,000 square feet versus 500 square feet?
And I just want to be clear, are you primarily talking here about the difference between?
Oh, any of them, so you have your shelter rates, you have, so that reservation fee, the cleaning fee, maintenance fee, they're all fixed, right? Regardless of the size, if at least, if that's how I read this, it appears to be all fixed based upon across the board, regardless of what the size or the unit is.
Well, they are, but the shelter fee, cleaning or maintenance fee is not as much. It's less than a house and.
Yeah, maintenance part, I get that, but the cleaning part, again, to clean this room versus the clean, the vacuum, this is gonna take a lot more time than the vacuum 100 square foot.
I know there's this range that says $20 to $100, but do you know what we actually have the houses set at for the cleaning fee? $20 to $100.
Mr. Gallantz, you're suggesting a graduated scale. Is what
Yeah.
you're saying. Yeah.
I want to say.
I mean, to me, that seems logical, right? Because otherwise, if I'm a consumer and I'm subsidizing someone else who's, renting a bigger shelter and they're paying, I'm looking at, wait a minute, this doesn't make sense. That's just how my mind works. Because I suspect you're gonna have customers that are gonna ask that, because I would ask that.
So,
Mr.
okay, so you looked at.
We did. I'm almost certain that the house was 150 numbers.
I mean, we can take a look at that data. So our goal, backing up to what I would like to see, is that resolution with the budget amendment authorizing the expenses and then standing up the new fees for 2023. We really want to get that in place because so that we can execute it next year, right? Also, we have, for full purposes, when we book these via contracts, we take half the payment. So we have already communicated tentatively to people booking the halls and the larger shelters next year that these fees are, we think they're about this much. And we don't have final amounts until we have approvals, and you'll see the balance charged to you on your invoice of, somewhere between, I think we were showing now, right, $150 or $250 of fees, right, added to their rates. So we have time as people. So if we want to we just want to come back and take a look at the impact that that would have on the total amount collected and look at, you know, because there are benefits to a flat fixed fee as well in terms of just, you know, the collection and how that looks. We don't have that data with us, right?
Yeah, and I mean, you know, if you think about, if we try to do this on a percentage base, and I mean, that means us going out and I gotta collect time for my employees every time they clean a venue and then apply it post reservation.
Oh, I'm talking, it's similar to, Chair, Mary, is that, you just have a scale, right? So if you got a large, small, enclosed shelter, you determine that it's X for the most part. And you're right, this is, well, call it minimal viable product, right? We're starting with something, so we can always change it. I get that.
Yeah.
As we experience more, what is the true cost, as you said, 2.5 hours on average? Well, if we gather a little bit of that data over the next year, realize we're not even paying for, you know, a fraction. So do we need to change these in the future? But to me, it seems to even start with, it should be scaled. So the difference between a small open shelter to a cabin or large, we already know that there's a difference there. And so should it be $35 for the large, or 45 versus 25 as a fixed? That's all I'm saying. I know the idea of trying to go out and percentage wise, but at least just have a graduated scale based upon, you know, the square footage, because square footage alone is going to tell you you're going to need more time to clean.
Let us, I don't completely disagree, and I know usually I like to
my
keep you out of the
apologies,
weeds,
I
but
agree.
I do think that this is a good conversation, and we've had time to get this the way we want it. So let's just bring all three of these items back next month, and we'll do some additional analysis on amounts collected and impacts that has on the 2050 plan, and be prepared to kind of talk through what those scenarios might look like. Because yes, you're right, there's multiple ways that we can execute this. And we have time to figure out which one we want to stand on.
Mr. McCulloch had a question. Yes, sir.
Yeah, well, I just had a comment with regard to Brian's comment, which I totally get, Brian. I mean, that's an excellent, you know, observation. What I tend to see in my business is we have a service department and things like that. People, you know, consumers like just consistency with regard to certain service costs. And so what you do is you almost just do dollar cost averaging, which is exactly sort of what they're talking about, which is you're simplifying it, taking the average of all of those and then just putting them together in aligned pricing. So I know what you're saying, but you know, to what they were talking about, a lot of the cost is just, for instance, just getting a vehicle out there and a person out there. Once they're out there, you know, the amount of time they spend on a certain amount of cleaning in a large shelter versus a small is, you know, something that they sort of factor, that's sort of baked into the cake. So the overhead, like in our business, we have something called shop fees. So whether a guy spends, you know, 3 hours fixing something, or he spent a half an hour, everybody pays the same shop fee. And it's just sort of dollar cost average. It's a zero at the end of the day. We're just hoping that that comes out to zero, and that just covers the cost of those things. So I understand your point. I totally get that. I think consumers typically like what you see right here, which is a flat rate. And so that's sort of, you know, that, and that's just my, you know, counter to that.
And you know, it's worth mentioning, you know, one thing I did last year is I looked at the number of times we had to turn over these venues. And, you know, I talked with my staff and, you know, we all had, you know, we looked at each one individually, all right, how much time on average does it take us to do this? And I calculated those labor hours across everything. So, you know, we have 9 cabins, we spent 800 hours this year. If you know, average everybody's salary, it costs us roughly this much money. Here's the appropriate fee to cover those expenses if we maintain that same number or same level of fees. And that's, you know, really kind of how we got to some of these numbers.
And I get that, and it's, you factor in there that, to your point, is the small cabin, you're looking at an overall, how long does it take you to clean everything, get it all done? You ever look at how long it takes you to clean a small cabin versus these other venues? You know what I mean? How do we get that same fee, but more of a fair basis that, okay, so we spend 9 hours, but we only spend 1 hour in a small cabin. Then we go to the large venue, we spend 4 hours in there, just hypothetical, you know what I mean? And
Well,
it
the
brings
large
the fees
venue
down,
Is
you know,
higher.
break it down. Exactly. And that's what, I think that's what you're getting at is
If we did look at the cost, right, so Glacier Hill Hall has long-term 2050 maintenance costs, also more tables, more chairs, more appliances, more, you know, toilet paper, more, so they have higher costs, right? So to your point, it isn't exactly fair to say that their maintenance fee is $50 and, you know, we can rebuild the whole shelter for the same cost, you know, I mean, there's, but we were just kind of trying to find a solution.
Mr. Gallows.
Sorry, Mr.
Yeah,
Bird.
Mr. Burke.
I understand both points, but you're not guaranteed rentals either. So if one year you have more small units rented than large, and then the next year you have more large rented, you're gonna have variations in your labor costs that way too. So by breaking it down, as Supervisor Gallix pointed out, you'd be able to balance that out in relationship to the shelters you're renting.
Yeah, that's a good point. That was something else I was gonna touch on, and that is worth taking a look at. One thing we're gonna be implementing for next year is I'm having our business manager give me monthly updates on our rentals and where we're at percentage wise on number of bookings compared to, you know, I use 2-year historical averages. And I'm gonna be able to track on a month by month basis, okay, if we're down 20%. I gotta manage our, you know, our maintenance fee revenue that we're projecting will be down 20% too. So that will affect the number of these projects I can implement that we're using the maintenance fee for. So that is something we're looking at, but also, you know, I would point to here.
So what are you suggesting, Ms. Ludovic? You just to, I'm not sure if the table is the right word, or just to put this
I mean,
subject.
so I don't want to indicate in any way, shape or form that we feel like we're wrong, because we did run data on this. We
Right.
did run an
Right.
analysis on this. And let's really look at this and make sure we are capturing how much money we're collecting, how much we're capturing, how much the labor cost is, and show that.
Mr. Gallows.
Again, it's just two different points, right? You said you did all the math and you're just doing that averaging. Or as Mr. Berg and I may be suggesting, well, do you do it by unit because you're gonna have fluctuations, and are you truly then covering your actual cost? We don't know that answer yet. So as I said earlier, do we use this as a starting point and determine if it needs to be changed in a subsequent year? Because we can change the fee schedule from year to year, correct?
Right, so, and that was kind of my follow-up is, you could just approve this. The 2024-2025 fee schedule will be back in front of this committee this summer, right? Because we approve it every year, and the rate analysis is not that dissimilar from what we're talking about with the fee setting. And those are pieces that this is one thing that, yeah, we can do this. I mean, I don't have a strong preference about how we do it.
Well, I don't want to slow up the process. And if you guys, as you said, so thank you for the context behind the math, Logan, that you've done. So proceed with it and determine if it's truly meeting.
See if it's actually working.
And we're not gonna know that until it actually is in play.
Correct.
And I appreciate the fact of tracking that occupancy, if you will, more closely, because it'll be interesting to see what type of feedback, and for that matter, you know, do we have, sorry, I don't know if this is off subject, if this is policy or whatever, but if we see fluctuations in occupancy, whatever, reservations, do we get a sense of why that's occurring? Especially if we increase fees, you know, is there a feedback form or a rejection form of, you know, cancellations after it's implemented? I'm just trying to get a sense of how do we know if the fees are too high and people are saying, yeah, no.
Well, and if you remember the presentation when we increased the fees on the hall, it was at almost over 90% bookings, which tells you that you can increase rates. right? And we just walk, we're up with the Milwaukee's best.
It's just the little
Right.
ones like tiny cabins, you know, if you pay.
Yeah, we don't have those booked.
Right, that's my point, is do we need to consider pricing? And that's something, without the data, you can't make a decision.
Right.
So the recommendation
So
is
the
we
rest of all we do
proceed.
is, I'm not objecting to proceeding with the schedule. Because there's always opportunity to gather more information to determine if policy needs to change.
And will adjust as is appropriate when the time comes throughout the season, correct?
Next year.
I mean, well, if there's a problem, we're gonna bring those forward, right? I
Right.
mean, that's kind of, we track and monitor the revenue streams very, very, very closely because we now we live and breathe by that. And so that's a lot of what our conversation is around of where we're exceeding, where we're not. And we think that this is a good step, whether it's the end all be all of where we would like to get to. It's an improvement, right? So that's kind of why it's in front of you. Well, if it advances the 2050 plan, it starts to spend more money on tables and things. Yeah. things we need to improve.
Mr. Gallant,
I did have a question related to the resolution though. So this is the budget amendment.
Yeah.
You know, and it talks about park fees in certain business segments, et cetera, and it says maintenance fees are a key component. But from our earlier comment about the reservation fee, right? You said the reservation fee has underneath the cleaning and maintenance. And when someone gets their contract, whether it be a tiny cabin or whatever, they'll see that. So.
Well, tiny cabins don't get contracts. They're on Airbnb, right? So it's a little different.
Well,
Airbnb
it's still
will see it too,
contract, right? They still see the breakout
Yeah.
of the pricing, right? They're
Right.
gonna see cleaning, they're
Yeah.
gonna see maintenance.
Yep.
So is this shouldn't this say reservation fees? It says maintenance fees.
So there's two reasons for that. Just very quickly, our software, our booking software, DMI, only has the ability for us to put in one fee spot. Right, so that's why we lump it into reservation fee and then categorize it separately and we'll have, because we can't add spots to charge money through our system. On your second question about maintenance fee, the reason why the maintenance fee is called out is because that is the fee that is new and is the one driving the new collection, which is going to result in the authorization of the expenses.
So the cleaning fees, they were embedded before, but they're just called out. now.
Yes.
So technically they are new. They weren't a separate fee schedule per policy. They were baked into the rental.
Well, they were in here below, in the houses already. I think it's at like 20 to 75, 20 to 50 bucks and 25 to 70 bucks. But there was just a one reservation fee for the large shelters, and that was 150 bucks, right?
Yeah.
They didn't have a cleaning fee. So it is newly called out, but the overall total amount paid isn't that different.
Again, just for transparency, we talk about open government transparency. So if our constituents are saying, hey, what is this? You know, we've always had it. Well, where was it? So that.
Yeah.
Some people might ask that question, so are we prepared for it? That's all.
Yeah.
and in fact, the daily rental or the daily fees to use the parks is not being changed at this time. Is that correct?
Those changes would come with the budget. I mean, usually this would too, except we have a biennial budget and we want to implement it next year. So that's kind of why you're seeing the fee schedule. That's one of the things we're talking about of even bringing all of our fee schedules potentially annually. Because even though we can bake in increases, so say for the golf course rates, we can say, okay, it's going to be 3% a year and show you that for 2 years. Just a refresh of here's what the 2024 rates are, even if we just kind of talk about it. Because we revisit it every year. We don't set rates and then, take a look at them when June calls and with the
Okay, have we appropriately discussed the policy statement?
I think so.
Question, all right, then what about the budget amendment? Any other further discussion or question on that? All right, then let's go back to item C, the fee schedule. And we're saying if we adopt this, that we're gonna look at this, it's gonna be subject to update, renewal and revision during the next year, when we normally set the final rate for 2024. Is that correct? My understanding properly? Okay, on item C, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item D, the policy statement. Any questions or comments about that? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And then the budget amendment, which will go to the entire board for approval. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you. Our next meeting will be Thursday, December 15th at 7:30 a.m. We will now move to a closed session.